Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Audit. We are at the approval of the agenda stage. There is one change in item 5.4, report from Farouzan, Chief Audit Executive, Office of the Internal Audit, dated May 23rd, 2018. Parking infractions audit report, replacement pages 5.4-7 and 5.4-8 are in front of you. With that, are there any additions, deletions, changes to the agenda? Seeing none, Councilor Medeiros, you move approval of the agenda. All in favor? That carries. Anyone have a declaration of conflict of interest they'd like to declare? Seeing none, there's nothing in consent. Our first delegation is from Farouzan, Chief Audit Executive, Office of the Internal Audit, Fraud Framework Update. Farouzan? Wherever you want. There's problems with the clicker yesterday. Okay. There we go. Okay.
Through the chair, I wanted to provide committee with an update on our fraud framework. I'd come to audit committee February the 20th and provided an draft fraud prevention policy, and that was endorsed by committee. It was then taken to council and approved, and it's been effective as of March the 1st. So between March the 1st and sort of the end of this month, we have gone to various departments, divisions, and had fraud presentations. This is part of the information session for staff to understand what our fraud framework looks like. So not only details of the updated fraud policy, but also the fact that we have a hotline and the new requirements under the policy with respect to staff with respect to the fraud policy, the requirements of staff. In addition, there were 4 articles that were written. One was actually in collaboration with HR on employee benefits fraud. We also collaborated with HR, and there is now a new onboarding process. So anyone that now starts with the city is given a copy of the fraud prevention policy and is signing an acknowledgement of that policy. In addition, moving forward, we're going to have some more presentations with departments and divisions, and continuing to write articles in connections, just so that the information does push down to staff, so that there is an overall awareness of our fraud framework at the city and the city's perspective of zero tolerance for fraud. The key messages that we have been passing along to staff is the fact that fraud prevention is everyone's responsibility. We are tying it into our corporate values because this provides a platform for staff to be transparent and open and to do the right thing as an employee for the city. In addition, we also talk about the hotline being one of the means with which to report fraud. We do advocate to go to the employee's manager if they don't feel comfortable, then to go to the hotline. And we've listed ourselves as a resource for any employee or for divisions or for departments in terms of materials, or if there is a need to look at the policy to understand it.
That's it? Okay. Councilor Medeiros.
Through the chair, thank you for the work here, the presentation. Just regarding the $40K we pay per year, and since 2016, and from what I see the numbers, can you just speak to the value for money we're getting from there? Because alternatively, if we didn't have this hotline, there would still be a process in which staff could report, I guess, what they thought fraudulent activity, be it through the website, to secure website. Now, $40,000 per year, doesn't seem we're getting that value there. Understandably, this is important, but what's your thoughts on that?
Through the chair, I respect your point. I believe prior to my arrival that was what was paid. Last year, the outsourced vendor that we use for the hotline actually discounted that price, so we didn't even pay anywhere near the 40. And the idea was that for this year, we would do these presentations and have staff understand that we have a fraud framework. And after 1 year, so I would come to audit committee, provide sort of my assessment of where things stand after the year, because beyond that, it would probably be closer to the 40, but we're not paying that much right now. I would say the overall acceptance and positive feedback that we've been having through these presentations has left me feeling that we are on the right track. So I would like to sort of see out that 1 year and then come back to audit committee with a recommendation as to should we proceed or should we not. I think right now there is a lack of understanding that we have this framework. Every time we go to the presentations, most people don't even know that we have the hotline. So I think in all fairness, for us to make that decision right now, I think it's a bit premature.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions? Councilor Rios, you've received the delegation. All in favor? That carries. Our first report is item 5.1, Corporate Fraud Prevention Hotline Update. Are there any questions to this report? Seeing none, Councilor Miles, you move the report. All in favor? Farouz?
So
You have a
through the
question?
chair, I just wanted to make a quick comment. So when you look at this report, you can actually see that there has been more activity through the hotline. I wanted committee to be aware that this time last year, we had 3 open investigations. And right now, what we're showing is that there's been 9 new calls that have come in. So 9 new reports have come in. So we're looking at a total of 15 versus last year, this time we had a total of 3. And I think that again speaks to the conversations that we're having, the
awareness.
presentations that we're having. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear before you receive the report.
Yep. Crystal? All in favor of that? Carries. Our next report is the status of management action plans. Any members have any questions with relation to this report? Councillor Moore is thinking about. You're good. You'll move the report? All in favor? That carries. Next report is the building inspections audit report. Any questions on the building inspections audit report? Do you want me to go on to the next one? Come back? No? Councillor Miles.
So I don't want to let this report just go without some discussion on it. Though, excuse me, I didn't have any specific questions other than I am a little bit concerned about the numbers of inspections that we have, the number of staff that we have to follow through with the inspections, the fact that I think it's still all paper. We don't have an automated system, so we're tracking paper.
So through the chair, I believe that Rick would probably be best to speak to it, but while we were doing the audit, there was a significant amount of paper. Having said that, management does have a plan with which to address it, so I think Rick will be the best to answer their solution to that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. If I could just through to you, Mr. Kennard, it's managing this process which seems to be sort of outdated. And so I know that you have plans of implementing a new automated paper system, but there's going to be lots of barriers to that, even just getting your inspectors to start using an automated system is probably not going to be the easiest thing. I know with members of council, we're supposed to use our laptops in order to read our agendas, but we don't like that. We like our paper. So, I mean, I'm concerned about the numbers and how we're going to get this up to speed quickly. Maybe you can help.
Through you, Chair. First of all, thank you for the introduction, and please call me Rick. Mr. Kennard has always been my father, and
Okay.
you can just call me Rick.
Okay, Rick.
So you're 100% right in the fact that the system that we are currently using to manage the permits that come through has, for the last, I want to say, 3 years, sort of been at a standstill. The reason that is the case, back in 2014, we embarked on a project to get these permits online. And in 2014, I want to say we got about 50% of the way through that project. We were making good progress. And then we hit a couple of roadblocks. It was, to make a long story short, I left the organization for approximately a year. During that time, the project was put on hold. The decision was made to first upgrade Amanda from the version that we have to a web-based version. So that project has been underway for some time now. We expect that come October, that will be finalized. So once that is finalized, that opens the door for us to set the other balls back in motion.
Can I just stop you?
Sure.
What do you mean it'll be finalized? Like
So
the
we-
system isn't available for you to use yet?
It is not the web-based system. So the transition between an older version to a newer version of any software is a bit of a complicated process. You have to sort of at one point you have to stop development of any new processes in the current system so that you can get an exact replica of that system put into a sandbox, we'll call it, where you can start playing around with it, modifying it, making the upgrades that are necessary, and understand that you have a stable environment that you can move that back into when it's ready, and you haven't made any changes that are going to, cause the system to fail. So essentially you're put in a holding pattern for a period of time just to maintain stability in the two systems that you're working with to try to make that upgrade. So that upgrade is scheduled to be put in place this October. Amanda 7 will be live in October. And once that happens, we'll be able to start moving forward with the rest of that technology that we've been working on. So we do have, since 2014, money set aside and actually a purchase order in place with CSDC to develop our online solution. So that's already there. We brought, we're
So
beginning.
stop. Sorry. CSTC?
Sorry, I apologize. CSDC is the company that created Amanda, which is the database that we use to maintain our building permit applications and permits and inspections. So basically, our entire world is encompassed in that system.
And are they the ones that are upgrading the system to the new system?
It's a combination of that company and our internal IT department.
So once you get the system up and running, then do you have to download all the data, or is it a transfer of data?
It'll be a transfer of any data that's already in the system, in the database. The request to begin procurement for the digitization, which came to council last week, that is the first step in getting all of our paper-based information that we have in the archives into the digital world, and then we can migrate then from that digital format into that database.
Well, your inspectors then, when they're using their electronic devices to do the inspections, when they input that information, will it automatically go into the system?
It will. We expect by the spring of next year, we'll have that system in place. So again, it's that the direct migration to Amanda 7 won't provide that functionality immediately. That's one of those projects that we essentially had to put on hold until that stable environment is back up and running. And once we have Amanda 7 up and running, then we can start to integrate the solution for the inspectors. What we have done for the inspectors in advance of that is given them the mobile technology in terms of the smartphones that they need in order to accomplish that task. We just have to wait for the software to catch up.
Why is it taking so long?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, to be honest with you. There have been interruptions in my service here, so I think for at least a year's time, there was a bit of a transition, and there was maybe confusion in the direction in which we were going to go. But I think that's all been sorted out, and we have a very clear path of where we want to be, and we're aggressively trying to get there. It does, unfortunately, take some time. You'll encounter hiccups along the way, unexpected roadblocks, I guess, in what the software can and can't accomplish. So sometimes you need to tweak your business processes a little bit. But I would say that by the spring of next year, we'll be in a very different place in terms of that technology and our ability to move things to a paperless world. We have, on the internal side of things, we've moved as much as possible to already providing paperless reports for circulation. We've developed, more paperless routines for the issuance of our building permits. So when the builders now come in, we give them back digital copies of their drawings instead of creating a second copy of the plans they've submitted. So we're taking those steps internally where we can. And then this fall, once that Amanda 7 has gone live, we'll be able to go both feet into the fire and make this happen.
So, sorry, I'm trying to find the numbers of how many building permits were applied
Inspections?
for. Can anybody help me? How many building?
As of September 30th, 2017, a total of 120,421
No, that's
inspections.
That's how many
Inspections.
inspections were done, but the total number of applications I saw was
So, I
very
mean,
high.
It's,
In a typical year, we'll issue anywhere between 4,000 and 7,000 permits in a year.
2017, it was 4135 to September. So
Okay.
it's Figure 5.
Figure. Okay. So, yeah. I guess the only thing that I'd like to say to this is that we as a municipality are doing an awful lot of work around customer service and the way we interface with the community. And this is a huge area, not only of where we're interfacing with the community, but I think and also another big area where there is a lot of risk involved. And that it's really important that we get our house in order in this particular section. And I know, Mr. Kennard, you had started this process before you left, but the timing is what's troubling me, is that we know what we need to do, but it's taking way too long in order for us to get there. So I'd like to really see us make this a priority, so that the targets and the deadlines that you've set are met, because it's a source of revenue, it's customer service, it's risk. There's all even the fact that we don't have a way of monitoring the inspectors and what they're doing on the job. A lot of inspectors have been here for a very long time. So, it's just one of those, this is one of those situations that just isn't sitting right with me, and I think we really have to focus in on it, and I'd like to thank Audit for the report. And I know that it's not, Mr. Kennard, it's not without you trying to move this forward. I'm not casting any negative aspersions. I'm just saying, from the corporate standpoint, we need to get on this, and we need to get on it quickly, and we need to ensure that the checks and balances are in place.
Harry?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that the house is definitely in order as far as if you look at performance metrics and what the team's been doing. The digitization, we want to be sure we do it right. I mean, you're seeing with Phoenix at the federal level, if you know, the whole component of freezing a system while you're upgrading it to a web-based is really important versus just jumping and modernizing a component of it. I think that corporately, we bring this up almost every week at CLT, that this will be a corporate priority
That's good
to
hear.
help Rick Kennard's team, because, you know, I've been out there several times. So definitely the house is in order. The more we're doing on the change management side, the more it'll be working and leapfrogging other municipalities once we get this going in next spring.
And Councillor Miles, just to that defense, and I think this upgrade was first approved in the 2015 budget, is that correct, Rick?
Yes, Chair Pelletier, I think it may have been 2014 or
14
2015.
for the 50, yes. And from my understanding in conversations with other municipal partners, there too, other municipalities are having issues with Amanda. They're not getting up ready. They kind of will be there, but there's a lot of other municipalities that are kind of having those issues, but there are a wide range of issues that come along with this. Are you done, Councillor Miles? Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I know my memory can be a little foggy sometimes, but I don't recall there ever being an audit report on this division. So, and I don't, not, if you can answer, great, but I don't recall there ever being a report, and I think I've been on audit committee for probably 18 years. So to answer Councillor Miles' question about why is it taking so long, sometimes until you shine the spotlight on things, you don't really know. The daily grind just continues, and so was there ever an audit done? Do you know?
Through you, Chair. Councillor Moore, there was an audit on the financial piece, I understand.
Yeah,
maybe
the financial, but
that's
on
right.
this piece of it.
But on the actual, so in the 10 years that I've been here, and through the knowledge of the people that preceded me, I don't recall that at least in 15 years there has been on this part of the process.
Okay.
And you're right. I mean, you know, we did see a lot of these gaps. We've done some restructuring, created a manager for technical audit on our side of things that will be developing an auditing program for our inspectors in the field, and the technical side of the review in-house as well. So we did see a lot of these things coming, but it is absolutely fantastic to be able to work with audit to pinpoint or fine-tune what we should be doing and what we should be focusing on, because sometimes there's even just so many things that you know that you need to do. It's good to have direction on what you need to focus on first. And so it was a pleasure actually working with
Well, I think
Fruzen.
this speaks volumes for the value that this kind of an audit function brings to the corporation in order to improve how we do business and how we meet the demands of the public, because, you know, we all get the complaints from time to time.
We do.
Some of those take a little bit longer to solve, as Rick knows. I guess my concern is that at some point, when I look at how development and building permit issuance and so on is happening in the city, there's less greenfield. I mean, it's still taking place, but there's a greater focus now on multi-residential, the second suites. People are improving their properties through, you know, by putting an addition on or changing the original structure somehow. I hope that we have the talent and the training in place for our staff, because it's a different kind of inspection. And, you know, I think that's where we're getting some friction perhaps, where those types of projects, somebody doing a home renovation and so on, they need the inspector there quicker, more responsive, providing a little bit more guidance and support for the resident. And so at some point, well, I'm sure that, you know, you've got a handle on sort of what you have in terms of talent in the and attitude in the division, but it is something that we can't look at these numbers and look at the financial piece and think that that's the whole picture. It's much more than that. It is the customer service piece that Councillor Miles raises that is so critically important. So I think that as we move forward, having staff that are comfortable with the second suite, multi-res, the office building, those types of things, it's a different type of workload than what they've perhaps been accustomed to in the past.
Through you, Chair. I appreciate that you have that insight, Councilor Moore. It is 100% true. The second units in particular have changed the face of our business in the last 3 years. We have quadrupled the number of permits in 3 years. We started out, I think, with 58 permits the first year. We went to 258 the next, 400, and we're on track for 700 this year. And twice already this year, we've issued more second units in a month than we've issued low-rise, which is, for Brampton, a remarkable change in business. I mean, you know, in the past, we've issued hundreds and hundreds of low-rise residential, and to your point, it's very simple for an inspector to go out and do a framing inspection where you have carpenters on site that know exactly what they're doing. When you enter somebody's basement that's trying to do a home renovation project and create a second unit, it's a very different ballgame, and they are much more resource intense than our typical development has been. And with the focus now on bringing in more complex buildings like the university, like the Center for Innovation, we do need to garner the talent that can handle that type of work as well. So we're very different ends of the spectrum than we have been in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Mayor Jeffrey.
So I want to thank staff for the report. It was really interesting, and I think once again almost every audit report we find out there's still too much manual entry in everything that we're doing, and to try and to move us to technology. I feel for you. I'm glad I don't do this job. I feel like you're trying to fix the car while you're still driving it. So it's one of those, when you talk about resource intense, can you explain to me how the building division works for somebody who knows nothing about it? When I read the report, if all the inspection reports have to be put in by 4 o'clock, what time do your inspectors start? And my guess is how many visits would they do potentially in a day, 4 or 5, and to try to write an inspection report to meet that deadline of 4? My guess is that's challenging considering the distance that they're likely going between projects as well. It seems there's a lot on the table that you have to manage.
Through you, Chair. Your guess is correct. We have 34 inspectors spread out throughout the city, and they're assigned geographically. Every day they could leave the office with anywhere from 5 to 60 attempt results required. So when I say 60 items on your to-do list, doesn't necessarily mean you're traveling to 60 different houses. You could be going to a subdivision and doing 10 footing inspections in a row, and that's pretty straightforward. But when you account for the travel time, our inspectors come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. They get their to-do list for the day. They head out of the office by 10 o'clock at the latest after looking through the files to have a better understanding of what they're about to go to inspect, and then they'll go out and they'll go from site to site, and on a busy day, our inspectors will tell you that they stop for lunch when they can, and then they come back to the office at around 3, enter the results in the system to be in by 4 o'clock. So you can see that there's obviously an advantage to us having a solution in place for our inspectors once they leave the office to have their to-do list on their smartphones, to enter the results as they're going throughout the day, and again, for us to be able to update the to-do list throughout the day. So an inspector can come in the office in the morning and leave right away, not having to wait for changes to the to-do list to accommodate somebody who's called in sick or somebody who's on vacation. And so with that solution in place, we're gonna see big efficiencies in our inspection processes. We've already started sharing through Brampton Maps the results of our inspections, the results of our plans review, so citizens can log in through that GeoHub and take a look and see what the status of their inspection is or what the status of their permit application is. This will be further enhanced and so that it will be happening in real time as the inspector is out there. So this time next year will be a different world for the building division for sure.
So through you, Mr. Chair, is your to-do list where you're procuring for that mobile inspection solution, or are you using something now in the interim that provides that?
Through you, Chair, the mobile inspection solution is that software that we will need to make that happen.
Will need.
We will.
So what are you using right now?
Right now, the inspectors have to come back to the office. They do have litaptops, but the connectivity sometimes is limited. They can use the hotspot on their phone, but again, it's a little more cumbersome to carry around a laptop with you and try to do work in your vehicle. The smartphone solution is definitely the solution we're looking for. This particular mobile inspection app was developed by inspectors with this particular company to specifically develop a solution for inspectors in the field. And it's a very robust, very easy to use tool. And to your point, Councillor Moore, some of the inspectors that have been around for 30 years and like doing things the way they've always done them, the easier we can make the solution for them, the more chance it has for success.
Can I ask, is there any legal exposure to us not being able to provide accurate details in a timely fashion as compared to other municipalities?
To be honest with you, through you, Chair, to be honest, I would say that the level of service that we provide, even with limited technology, is still better than most municipalities. We have internal commitments to complete our inspections within 24 hours. We have red line reports that come out at the end of the day to identify any inspection results that haven't been entered. We'll address those first thing in the morning. And our customer service is still very face-to-face, and we talk to the customers over the phone when they call in the morning to get details about why their inspections have passed or not. I've been in other municipalities that can't come close to that level of service, but I do anticipate we will get better by providing these improvements in our technology. I don't think that there's I think that the risk, legally speaking, is relatively low at this point.
Last question, and I apologize if you covered this. I had to go outside for a phone call. The Amanda was supposed to be scheduled and implemented this fall in October, and now it's revised to 2019. That's a huge gap. We really need this upgrade as soon as possible. Is there any way we can accelerate this?
Through you, Chair. I believe that that date has come back to this fall.
Okay.
At the time that the report was written, there were challenges with the cloud solution that was being proposed through CSDC, and the project has since been moved on premise and is now, I think, back on track to be delivered this fall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. And you'll move receipt of the report. There are no recommendations. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is a report for parking infractions audit report. Are there any members that have any questions that relate to Mayor Jeffrey?
So unfortunately, I read this really late. Are we going to get a report? Can we just get an overview?
We can get an
first?
overview.
I'd love to get an overview first.
There's
That'd
a
be
lot of
great.
dollars here, so
Then
yeah.
there may not be any questions if I hear what I need to hear.
Perfect.
Through the chair, on the 2018 audit plan, we had by law enforcement. In speaking with management, this was highlighted as an area of focus. So we did focus the audit on parking infractions. In reviewing the process, we went from by law enforcement right to the Provincial Offense, I forgot what they're called, POA, Provincial Offenses Act. So we looked at the whole process from the issuance of a parking infraction all the way to the settlement, be it cancel, reduction, or affirm the infraction notice. In reviewing the AMPS process with respect to the screening and the hearing decisions, we did find that there was an inconsistency in the application of the guidance. Our recommendation was that management go back to review the criteria with respect to what are the specific instances where you would cancel, reduce a parking infraction, as well as documentation requirements. There was we found in a sample 22% were documented as to why the penalty notice was reduced or canceled. Also, with respect to data governance, there was an so data accuracy, data consistency, and overall ownership of the data between class, which records the revenue piece, so the payment, and auto process, which is where the screening officers would be entering their decisions on the parking tickets. As well, we recommend that management look at a solution with respect to technology. There was a number of instances of voided penalty notices, and that was 64% of those penalty notices related to infractions that were given, even though the person in question would have had a valid parking tag between 2 and 6 a.m. So that would avoid that would avoid the voided penalty notices, and also the overall procedures be updated to reflect current practices.
So,
I still have
oh, okay, yeah.
interesting report. Again, there seems to be a very strong gap when manual procedures are required, even when you're holding a handheld device. There's still errors, so it's not just writing it, it's entering it onto a screen. So there's manual errors throughout. There's a lot of human error, which is unfortunate. Not that I want to replace the humans, but we seem to be making a lot of errors. I guess my question, I had one question that jumped to mind when we were talking about the screening process. If someone is entering, you spoke about inadequate documentation to substantiate the cancellation or the reduction of a PIN. Isn't this part of your job performance as a clerk or whoever we have put in this job to follow the rules? And if they're not following the rules, is this somehow captured in their job performance?
So through the chair, the current criteria does not mandate that the screening decision or the hearing decision is documented. There is guidance, but it's not mandated. So when we look at the SOP that were mentioned in the report, the only specific SOP where we talk about some documentation requirements was the SOP relating to undue hardship. And that requires a screening officer to obtain documentation, as well as in the decision speak to that documentation, yeah. Right? So, this is why we framed our recommendation that way, was to go back and have those requirements in place, because if it's only guidance, you can choose not to follow it, or you can follow it.
So people have clearly not been following it, and we need to put it in a standard
It's
operating
inconsistently applied. I mean, there are some screening, I don't want to sort of paint a wide brush. There are
No.
some screening officers that were appropriately documenting the decisions. And again, it was inconsistent between if it was in the docket or if it was an auto process. So having it stipulated that your screening decision is only going to be an auto process, here's what's required, here's the documentation that you should have, and having that consistent across all of the screening officers and hearing officers is sort of what we're looking at, so that there is a consistent approach, as well as consistency in how these items are being recorded. So one of our issues around the data was the fact that there is an inconsistent application of where things are being recorded in auto process.
And for the public, it's important to be accountable and transparent, so this will, on a go-forward basis, now have that transparency and predictability also for our staff. The other interesting finding that I noticed in your report was on the data ownership and oversight, how essentially this has been a child with no mother. No one has owned this data, and certainly this ad hoc basis for an authorized user list didn't exist either. I mean, you've done some really interesting work here to try and quantify how unstructured this program was before. I think you did a great job. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I just have one quick comment. So I think this is the first time that we looked at the process sort of end to end, and I don't think that, as we were discussing with the various parties, so bylaw enforcement and finance, as well as the people in the POA, no one's looked at it from this perspective. Having said that, we had 100% support. I mean, management embraced all of our recommendations. They understood what we were saying, and there was never any pushback with any of the recommendations, and it was an interesting perspective for them to look at it that way as well. So we were very encouraged with management support through this audit as well.
Oh, it's very interesting. Good work. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No other questions? Mr. Mouse, all in favor? That carries. The next item is item 5.5. Has never been done with Brampton Fire and Emergency Services. Are there any questions with relation to this audit? Quick overview, absolutely.
Through the chair. So in the 2018 audit plan, fire was identified as an audit to be done. An audit of fire had not ever been done. There had previously only been an audit of payroll with respect to fire and emergency services. So in meeting with Chief Boyce, we discussed what areas to focus on with respect to this audit. So specifically, we looked at the billing processes. And again, we're looking at manual processes, and we again highlight the need for more complete and accurate data where possible. I mean, this is a different situation because we are looking at an emergency situation, but where data is being captured, that it is captured consistently, accurately, completely. With respect, and also developing criteria, documenting what that criteria looks like with respect to the billing, with respect to the business rules around billing. With respect to apparatus and maintenance, management identified that there were some gaps. They have proactively addressed some of those gaps. We've reviewed their processes. Again, we support those steps forward that management has been doing with respect to inventory. And there's still some more work to be done. So again, we encourage those steps being followed. And finally, around performance metrics, there's benchmarks that should be used by fire. My understanding is that no other fire departments really meet those benchmarks. And again, we encourage management to close the gap when we look at response time, overall response time, as well as the components of response time.
Mayor Jeffrey.
Can you explain one of your recommendations, the first one on 5.5.8, which says investigative approaches to increase the accuracy and completeness of the information collected at the scene of accident. We understand there will be times that this is not possible, and here's the question. This becomes more crucial given the changes in police reporting practices that may have a negative impact on the effectiveness of motor vehicle collision city street billing. Can you explain that?
Sure. Through the chair, my understanding is that moving forward, so when police arrive on scene, they previously would have shared with fire the information from their police reports. Where it is not a reportable incident, they no longer will be doing any reporting. So from that standpoint, there will be less information available for them to capture because those reports will not be produced. In addition, because of privacy, they're now removing any relevant submit data, which would be data that fire would require on scene. So that reduces the amount of available information for fire because of these changes. And I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything?
Through the chair to the mayor, yes. So the police aren't responding to certain types of incidents now.
So give me an example.
Limited property damage would be an example. Police used to attend, now to, effectively use their resources. They're not responding to those incidents where there's no injury. So if it's just a property damage only.
So like a tree falls on a house type, like give me an example.
No, for motor vehicle
vehicle.
collisions.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little fender bender,
Okay.
perhaps in a parking lot or on a side street or something like that,
Okay.
they would not respond if there was no injury.
So essentially, there may be police reporting, but it would be at a later date. Would but that still wouldn't assist us.
Sorry, through the chair. So previously what would have happened, so if it was a minor fender bender, the police would have produced a report, they would have had the person's name, their driver's license, insurance, and that would have been shared with fire. If it's that case, they're not even producing a report. So that information would no longer be available for fire to use. As well as with the privacy, that information would now be taken out. So it makes it difficult then to bill because you don't have that information. And if if the individuals are gone and the automobile is gone, then that information is gone. So that reduces the information for them to then proceed with the billing aspect of it.
So this is, through your chair, this is a recent decision? Like
I'm
last year?
going to say
2
yes,
years?
but I'm looking
Yeah.
to Chief Boyce to confirm the date.
Through the chair, yes, it is recent, within the last few months.
Interesting. So this is a cost-saving measure, I presume, on behalf of Peel Regional Police.
Yes, you're correct.
And what kind of an impact are you predicting? Would it be a third of your calls, a quarter of your calls?
Through the chair, I would honestly, I'd hazard to guess. I'd have to go back and look at the data.
It'd be interesting to see from what impact it's going to have on the city for this, because essentially this is what it appears Peel Regional Police is doing. They are making judgment calls about triaging the kinds of events that they're going to. So we're actually probably going to be talking a little bit about this tomorrow at council, but it is having an impact, whether it's through your billing, but it is having an impact. So
Through the
this is
chair,
the
we
first
can.
time I've seen it.
Yeah, so through the chair, we can share that information. Just give us a little bit of time to go back and
No,
look up at the percentage roughly.
Yeah, no,
that we
it's
have.
it wasn't something I was aware of. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And just really quickly, Chief, and we've talked about it a lot. I talked to the previous chief as well. It was so difficult to obtain a lot of the data information. Is it any different from when the police are on scene with fire compared to no police on scene and the people have to go to a reporting station?
So through the chair, yeah, that would be easier, obviously, when we work alongside police to collect that information, for sure. Just another resource there. They're collecting information. We're working at mitigating the emergency and dealing with that aspect, and then capturing the information afterwards. And provided too also that the people involved in that accident stay on scene when we get there. They're realizing that police is not coming and it's just fire coming. They may leave before we get there.
Right. And then what if they go to a reporting station? And is there something at that reporting station that triggers information to be gathered by Brampton Fire Emergency Services?
No, through the chair, we don't have any ability to get that information.
So that's a discussion that maybe we should be having at the region. Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. Councilor Moss.
So I want to get this clear. So there is a minor traffic accident, minor property damage, probably no injury. So police are saying now when we get those calls, we're not responding. So why is fire sending a big truck to respond to these kind of calls then?
Who's saying fire sending a big truck?
I'm
So
Didn't
I'm
sound like a
assuming.
question.
through the chair, the reason we'd respond to those minor MVCs, there could be still some property damage, there could be spill containment, so leaking fluids from the cars. We'll contain that, make sure it doesn't go into, say, the sewer, the drain. That would be, just ensuring that the scene is safe, and then we will be leaving from there.
So I think the whole concept of three-tiered response is maybe a discussion that needs to be had with all responders, so that when one party determines that they're going to opt out, that the impacts of that on the three-tiered response process is actually looked at. And we recently made a decision where we weren't going to send a large vehicle out, we were going to send a smaller vehicle out to,
Councillor Miles, Councillor Moore is next on the board. Do you want to go to her?
no? No?
So
No, okay,
So
I
if you-
gotcha, okay, good, yes, gotcha. Okay, so, back to the subject at hand. Sometimes I get the three mixed up. So, yes, so Mayor Jeffrey, as a member of the Police Services Board, the implications of some of these decisions, I think, really need to be discussed with all three parties. So, yeah, I think, okay. Well, I'll leave it at that, but that does concern me.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Moore.
Just so I understand, because this is just getting more confusing. There's a fender bender, and they call, how does fire become aware if police are not responding? And how is the message getting out? Because there are people who know that there's that they have to go to the vehicle reporting center. A lot of people don't. They call the police and still wait for them to arrive. There needs to be much more public awareness about what's happening now when somebody calls for assistance. So how's fire getting involved if police isn't?
So through the chair, when 911 is called, the dispatch process will start. We will start on the way immediately, and then as more information comes in, the caller will then advise them of, yes, it's just a minor property damage potential only. Then they will be advised the police will not be attending due to the minor nature of the scene. We've also just put in place, because of this new change, we hand out information to citizens to say, here you go from PRP, here's what happens, here's what you need to do, you need to attend the local reporting center, here's some of the questions you're going to be asked, so that they have an awareness of what happens and what they have to do and what their responsibility is, and why police is not attending.
So there's downloading and sideloading to another emergency response. So if somebody has an accident and wipes out a municipal tree, do we file a claim so that we get the cost of that tree replaced? Do we do that today?
No, through the chair, no, we do not.
We don't.
Same goes for a light post.
For a light post? So we don't put a claim in.
Through the chair, we only bill non-residents for MVC. We don't bill residents.
Okay, I think that, I'm not sure whether this is something that needs, whether you call it a task force or an ad hoc, where the three emergency response folks sit down and identify where the gaps are. This is an advocacy piece with the province to say, you think you solved one problem, or the police obviously have the discretion to make the choice not to attend. Something gives them the ability to do that, but it's created other problems and other issues, and we can sit and complain about it, and the others can too, but I think they need to be brought together and develop an advocacy piece to say, how do you save the province? How are we going to close these gaps so that it makes sense? Because this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, through the chair, and we still attend, like I said earlier, to maintain that scene preservation, to make sure there's no, leaks into a sewer, some of that stuff that's not necessarily a police matter, but a fire-related matter. So we still do have a role on those scenes.
I don't disagree with that, but if somebody calls somehow you're getting a call. I don't know how you're getting the call, but you're getting a call, whether it's through 911 because that's what they call, or they call the police, or however it's happening. You have the location, you have the details of what happened. Is it not something you can attend after the fact to see if there's something gone down the sewer or something? It just seems like we're going out to triage things that.
I think just with the nature of that incident, if there was a leak, we would want to contain it. I don't know if we could wait till after the fact before it had already run down into the sewer. I think time would be of the essence in some of those situations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. You'll move receipt of the report. All in favor? That carries.
Yes.
The next report is the audit appointment contract extension for KPMG. Any questions? I have a question. Is there any opportunity that we can negotiate the fee increase? I'd like to understand what, I don't believe that there was much of a negotiation. Sorry, I should rephrase and say I don't know if there was much of a negotiation. Is there an opportunity where we can go back at 1.5 from my understanding?
To the chair, yes, there's definitely opportunity to go back and negotiate. We did feel, however, the 3% increase was reasonable, given the fact that their fees were frozen for 3 years, and during that period, the inflation was about 5%. So we felt that 3% was quite reasonable, and even with the benchmarking analysis that we've done, even with the 3% increase, we still came below some of the other GTA municipalities that we looked at. But if it's the wish of council, we can definitely go back and renegotiate.
And I understand that compared to in other municipalities, we're not doing too bad, but I think if there's always room to do better and a little bit of negotiation,
Definitely.
KPMG's always been a good partner, but that being said, if there's an opportunity, so I would support moving that. Councillor Miles?
I was just going to support the recommendation.
And you would rather not try and negotiate maybe a cheaper amount?
Just through the chair, just to put it in perspective, 3% is only 3,700. So that's the amount.
You look at me like that's not a lot of money.
Report.
I have a mover of the report. All in favor? That carries. Wasting taxpayer dollars. There's no other new business. Question period. Is there any members of the public that wish to come up and ask a question? Are there any councillors that wish to ask a question? We have closed session, item 10.1, the security of the property of the municipality or local board. We'll now recess for 2 minutes. A motion to go into closed. Councillor Moore, all in favor? That carries. Next door? Next door.
it's working now, here. Can you hear it? On the speakers?
Members of committee, we came out of the in-camera session. We discussed item 10.1, security of the property of the municipality or local board. Information was received. Councillor Moore, you move adjournment is the next item on the agenda. All in favor? It's unanimous. Have a wonderful day, everybody.